There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. It is the exhaustion of a mind that refuses to be quiet. You lie in bed and your body is tired, but your thoughts are wide awake. You replay conversations from earlier in the day. You imagine worst-case scenarios about tomorrow. You analyze decisions you haven't even made yet. You try to predict outcomes you cannot control. And the more you think, the more restless you become. Overthinking feels responsible. It feels like you are preparing, planning, protecting yourself from failure. But in reality, overthinking is often just fear wearing the mask of wisdom. It feels productive, but it drains your peace. It feels careful, but it slowly erodes your trust. And long before psychology named it anxiety, long before modern culture normalized stress as ambition, the book of Proverbs already spoke directly to this condition of the human heart. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. These words from Proverbs 3:5-6 are often quoted, printed on coffee mugs, framed on walls, posted on social media. But we rarely stop long enough to let them confront us. Because if we are honest, most of us do not struggle with trusting God in theory. We struggle with trusting Him in practice. We say we trust God, but we still try to control every outcome. We say we believe He has a plan, but we still obsess over every detail of our own. We pray for guidance, but then we spend hours mentally rehearsing every possible disaster that could happen. And Proverbs does not gently suggest an alternative. It commands one: trust with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Leaning on your own understanding feels natural. It feels intelligent. It feels mature. After all, you have experiences. You have knowledge. You have learned from past mistakes. Your brain is wired to analyze patterns and anticipate danger. But there is a difference between wisdom and self-reliance that excludes God. Proverbs does not condemn understanding. It warns against leaning on it as your ultimate support. When you lean on something, you put your weight on it. You depend on it to hold you up. And many of us are leaning with our full emotional weight on our limited perspective. We are trusting what we can see more than the one who sees everything. We are trusting our ability to calculate outcomes more than God's ability to direct them. Overthinking is often the symptom of this leaning. When you cannot see a clear path forward, you try to think your way into certainty. When you cannot guarantee success, you try to plan your way into security. When you fear loss, you mentally rehearse every possible scenario so that you will not be surprised. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Overthinking does not create control. It creates the illusion of control. It gives you the temporary feeling that you are doing something about the future. But the future remains just as uncertain, and your heart becomes more burdened in the process. Proverbs is not calling you to ignorance. It is calling you to humility. It is reminding you that your understanding, no matter how sharp, is still limited. You do not know every variable. You do not see every hidden factor. You cannot predict every outcome. And yet, there is a God who does. In all your ways acknowledge Him, not in some of your ways, not only in spiritual decisions, in all your ways. In your career choices, in your financial stress, in your relationships, in your waiting seasons, in your disappointments. To acknowledge Him is more than a polite nod to heaven. It means to actively recognize His presence, His authority, His wisdom in the middle of your decision-making process. It means you stop acting as if you are alone in the room with your problems. It means you stop carrying the full psychological weight of outcomes that were never yours to control in the first place. Many people read this proverb as a comfort. And it is comforting, but it is also confronting. Because if God is truly directing your path, then you are not. If He is the one making your path straight, then you do not have to force every door open. You do not have to manipulate every conversation. You do not have to obsess over every possible mistake. Trusting God with all your heart means there will be moments when you do not have all the answers. It means there will be seasons when clarity comes slower than you would like. It means surrendering need to understand everything before you move forward. And that is difficult, especially for those who have been hurt before. Especially for those who learned early in life that if they did not stay alert, they would be disappointed. Especially for those who equate control with safety. But Proverbs invites you into a different kind of safety. Not the safety of predicting the future, but the safety of being guided by someone who already stands in it. When you trust in the Lord with all your heart, you are not shutting down your mind. You are repositioning it. You are moving from anxiety-driven analysis to faith-rooted wisdom. You still plan. You still act. You still think. But you no longer worship your own understanding. You no longer treat your perspective as ultimate. You recognize that your vision is partial, while God's is complete. If you are overthinking right now, maybe the issue is not that you care too much. Maybe the issue is that you are carrying something that was never meant to rest entirely on your shoulders. Maybe you are trying to direct a path that God has already promised to make straight. And perhaps the first step toward peace is not solving every possible problem in your head, but loosening your grip on the need to. Proverbs 3 does not promise a life without uncertainty. It promises a guide within it. And that changes everything. There is a reason Proverbs connects trust with the heart and understanding with the mind. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. The tension between those two phrases describes the inner battle most of us live in every day. Your mind wants certainty. Your heart wants security. And when life feels unstable, your mind tries to manufacture certainty so your heart can feel safe. That is where overthinking begins. It is an attempt to calm the heart by overworking the mind. You think that if you can just analyze enough angles, predict enough outcomes, prepare enough backup plans, you will finally feel at peace. But peace built on total mental control is fragile, because it depends on you never missing anything. And you always will. Your understanding is powerful, but it is also narrow. It is shaped by your past experiences, your wounds, your education, your fears, and your desires. When someone disappoints you, your understanding tells you to protect yourself next time. When you fail, your understanding tells you to avoid risk. When you are uncertain, your understanding tells you to delay movement until you feel completely sure. None of these instincts are inherently evil. In fact, they often feel wise. But Proverbs gently exposes the limitation beneath them. Your understanding can interpret data, but it cannot see destiny. It can calculate probabilities, but it cannot foresee divine timing. It can recall yesterday, but it cannot stand in tomorrow. This is why leaning on your own understanding eventually becomes exhausting. If everything depends on your ability to interpret situations correctly, then every decision becomes heavy. You begin to fear making the wrong move, saying the wrong thing, choosing the wrong path. You replay conversations not because you enjoy it, but because you are trying to prevent future rejection. You imagine worst-case scenarios not because you want them to happen, but because you are trying to avoid being blindsided. Overthinking is often a defense mechanism. It is self-protection at the mental level. But what if the constant need to protect yourself is quietly stealing your ability to rest? Proverbs does not say, turn off your mind. It says, do not lean on it. There is a difference between using your understanding and worshiping it. When you worship your understanding, you treat your perspective as final authority. If it makes sense to you, you move. If it does not, you freeze. If you cannot fully explain how something will work out, you assume it will not. But faith introduces a different operating system. Faith says that God's wisdom is not confined to your current field of vision. Faith says that a closed door may not be rejection, but redirection. Faith says that delay may not be denial, but preparation. And these interpretations are not always visible to your immediate logic. In all your ways acknowledge Him. This phrase shifts the focus from mental strain to relational awareness. Acknowledging God is not a one-time declaration. It is an ongoing posture. It means that in the middle of your planning, you pause and ask for alignment. In the middle of your anxiety, you consciously remember that you are not alone. In the middle of your ambition, you submit your desires to a higher wisdom. Acknowledging Him changes how you carry decisions. Instead of gripping them tightly, you hold them open-handed. Instead of obsessing over every possible misstep, you seek guidance and then move forward with humility. Consider how different your internal dialogue would be if you truly believed God was directing your path. When faced with uncertainty, instead of spiraling into, "What if this goes wrong?" you might begin asking, "What is God teaching me here?" Instead of interpreting every obstacle as proof you are failing, you might see some of them as protection. Instead of assuming that you must fix everything immediately, you might allow space for growth, for patience, for trust to deepen. This does not eliminate responsibility, it reframes it. Your responsibility becomes obedience and faithfulness in the present, not control over the entire future. Overthinking often grows in environments of comparison. You look at others who seem ahead of you, more stable than you, more successful than you, and your understanding starts building a narrative. You tell yourself that you are behind, that you missed your chance, that you should have made different choices. And because you cannot go back, you try to overcompensate by hyper-analyzing every next move. But Proverbs repeatedly contrasts wisdom with foolishness, and interestingly, foolishness in Scripture is not a lack of intelligence. It is living as if God is irrelevant. It is making decisions without reference to Him. When you compare your timeline to someone else's without acknowledging God's unique path for you, you are leaning entirely on human metrics. You are measuring your life by standards that may not reflect divine design. Trusting with all your heart means releasing the constant need to measure yourself against others. It means believing that the same God who guides their path is capable of guiding yours, even if the terrain looks different. It means accepting that growth is not always visible, and progress is not always linear. Sometimes the straight path God promises is not the shortest route between 2 points, but the one that forms your character along the way. And character is often built in hidden seasons, in quiet obedience, in decisions no one else applauds. There is also a deeper layer to overthinking that Proverbs quietly addresses: pride. Not pride in the loud, arrogant sense, but pride in the subtle belief that everything ultimately depends on you. When you cannot sleep because you are trying to mentally solve tomorrow, there's often an underlying assumption that if you do not figure it out, no one will. When you feel crushed by the weight of possible outcomes, there's often a hidden belief that the future rests entirely on your shoulders. But if God is truly sovereign, if He is truly wise, if He truly directs paths, then your role is significant, but not ultimate. You are responsible for faithfulness, not for omniscience. This realization can be both humbling and liberating. Humbling, because it reminds you that you are not in control of everything. Liberating, because it frees you from trying to be. You do not have to anticipate every problem. You do not have to decode every mystery. You do not have to predict every outcome. You are invited to trust, and trust is not passive. It is an active decision to place confidence in someone greater than yourself. It is choosing to move forward in obedience even when full clarity is absent. It is choosing peace over endless internal debate. If you find yourself stuck in cycles of overthinking, ask yourself this: what am I afraid will happen if I stop mentally controlling this situation? What outcome am I trying to prevent? What loss am I trying to avoid? Often, naming the fear exposes how limited your understanding really is. You are trying to prevent pain based on incomplete information. You are trying to guarantee success without seeing all variables. And Proverbs gently invites you to exchange that burden for something steadier. Not ignorance, not recklessness, but trust rooted in the character of God. When you lean less on your own understanding, you do not become careless, you become anchored. You still plan, but you pray. You still act, but you surrender outcomes. You still think, but you remember that your thoughts are not final authority. And in that shift, something begins to change internally. The mind slows down, the heart softens. The future remains unknown, but it no longer feels entirely hostile. Because if God is acknowledged in all your ways, then even uncertainty is not empty. It is inhabited by His presence. Overthinking promises safety, but delivers strain. Trust feels risky at first, but it delivers rest. And Proverbs is not merely offering advice for calmer evenings. It is offering a different foundation for your life. A foundation where wisdom begins not with endless analysis, but with reverent trust. A foundation where your understanding serves you, but does not rule you. A foundation where your path is not self-directed chaos, but divinely guided growth. So what does this look like in real life? Because it is easy to nod along with Proverbs 3 and still walk away unchanged. It is easy to say, I trust God, and yet continue living as if everything depends entirely on your calculations. The difference between hearing this proverb and living it is not found in emotion. It is found in practice. Trust becomes visible in small daily decisions. It shows up in how you respond when plans shift unexpectedly. It shows up in how long you allow your thoughts to spiral before you interrupt them with truth. It shows up in whether you pray only after exhausting your own strategies, or whether you begin with surrender. When anxiety starts rising, the first practical step is awareness. Notice when you are leaning. Notice when your mind shifts from healthy planning into obsessive control. There is a subtle moment when preparation turns into panic. It often sounds like this internally. What if this fails? What if I embarrass myself? What if I choose wrong? What if this never works out? The repetition of what if is usually the sign that you have crossed from wisdom into fear. In that moment, Proverbs 3 becomes more than a verse. It becomes a decision point. Will you continue leaning on your own understanding, or will you deliberately shift your weight? Shifting your weight spiritually may look simple, but it is powerful. It might mean pausing and praying honestly instead of continuing the mental argument. It might mean saying, God, I do not see how this works, but I acknowledge you in this decision. It might mean moving forward with obedience, even though you do not feel absolute certainty. It might mean accepting that clarity will come step by step, not all at once. Trust rarely eliminates uncertainty immediately. What it does is prevent uncertainty from dominating you. Another practical application is redefining what a straight path actually means. Many people assume that when Proverbs says, He will make your paths straight, it means life will become smooth and predictable. But a straight path in biblical language often refers to direction, not ease. It means alignment. It means you are moving in a way that is purposeful rather than scattered. It does not guarantee the absence of obstacles. It guarantees guidance through them. When you understand this, you stop interpreting every difficulty as proof you are outside of God's will. Sometimes the straight path still climbs uphill. Sometimes it passes through unfamiliar territory. But it remains directed. There's also a daily discipline hidden inside this proverb. Trust with all your heart is not a one-time emotional high. It is a repeated choice. Every morning you wake up with a limited perspective. Every day you face variables you cannot control. And every day you decide where your confidence will rest. If you wait until you feel fearless before you trust, you will wait forever. Trust often precedes the feeling of peace. You choose to rely on God before your emotions fully cooperate. Over time, as you practice this, something shifts. Your reflex becomes prayer instead of panic. Your first instinct becomes surrender instead of spiraling analysis. It is important to understand that overthinking is not solved by pretending you do not care. You care because the stakes feel real. Your future matters. Your relationships matter. Your purpose matters. But caring deeply does not require carrying everything alone. Trust invites you to care while releasing control. It invites you to participate without assuming ultimate responsibility for outcomes. That balance is maturity. It is not laziness. It is not passivity. It is humility. Imagine how different your life would feel if you truly believed that God was actively involved in directing your path. When a door closes, instead of immediately questioning your worth, you might pause and consider protection. When a timeline stretches longer than expected, instead of assuming abandonment, you might consider preparation. When confusion clouds your next step, instead of freezing in fear, you might move forward with the light you currently have. This does not remove disappointment. It reframes it. It anchors you in something steadier than your shifting thoughts. Overthinking shrinks your world to the size of your own understanding. Trust expands it to the size of God's wisdom. One leaves you isolated inside your mind. The other places you in relationship with the one who sees beyond it. And that relational aspect is crucial. Proverbs is not presenting a formula. It is pointing to a person. Trust in the Lord. Acknowledge Him. He will direct. This is relational language. It assumes closeness, dependence, ongoing communication. Peace is not found in mastering techniques to silence your brain. It is found in knowing the one who holds your future. Maybe right now you are facing a decision that feels overwhelming. Maybe you are stuck between options and terrified of choosing wrong. Maybe you are lying awake at night, trying to mentally engineer a guaranteed outcome. If that is you, hear this clearly. Your understanding is a tool, not a throne. Use it, but do not bow to it. Plan wisely, but surrender outcomes. Think carefully, but trust deeply. The weight of your entire future was never meant to rest on your shoulders alone. And this is why we are walking through Proverbs together on this channel. Because the book of Proverbs does not offer shallow motivation. It offers ancient wisdom that speaks directly into modern anxiety. It addresses anger, speech, discipline, money, relationships, pride, fear, the real struggles that shape daily life. Each proverb is short, but its depth is enormous. And when you slow down enough to sit with it, to wrestle with it, to apply it, it begins to reshape how you think, how you react, how you decide. If today's message resonated with you, do not let it end here. In the next videos, we are going deeper. We will explore proverbs about anger that can save your relationships. Proverbs about words that can either build or destroy your future. Proverbs about discipline that separate the wise from the foolish. This is not about collecting verses. It is about forming wisdom. It is about building a life that is not constantly shaken by fear, because it is rooted in something stronger than personal understanding. So if you are tired of overthinking, if you are tired of carrying tomorrow in your head every night, if you want to grow in real biblical wisdom for modern life, subscribe and continue this journey through Proverbs with me. Not for quick inspiration, but for steady transformation. Because wisdom is not built in a day. It is built decision by decision, trust by trust, step by step along a path that God Himself promises to direct. And maybe tonight, when your mind tries to spiral again, you will remember this simple but powerful truth. You do not have to understand everything to move forward. You just have to trust the one who does.